Welcome to another very special eSports Report Daily Update. We have my favorite ginger in the entire world here today.
So
it's
touching.
Mr. Benson.
Thanks,
Benson, I have you here today and tomorrow, and then you're going to take off and go to the Optic Land.
Yes.
Which is happening next week against Strictly Business Monday to Wednesday, but that's not the only land going down. And we're talking about the two teams today that'll be competing in that. What is happening with EnVy and TCM?
So EnVy, TCM, they also have a LAN at the EnVy house as well, and I'm really excited to see how that plays out because I know a couple of people were a bit, oh, I'm not sure if I really want to do that, you know, giving away strats, which is, you know, fair enough. You're going up to $1 million tournament, you don't want to give the other team all your strategies in case you do play them. But either way, you know, it's Europe's best team going up against one of North America's giants. It's going to be good.
So if you're kind of the team owner, because both EnVy and TCM have fantastic team owners, incredible organizations, who's actually getting the better end of this deal? Is it TCM getting the practice against another American top squad, or EnVy, who's not considered in the top 3 of American teams right now, facing up against Europe's #1 squad?
I would say it works out well for both of the two teams because, you know, it's very rare a European and American team will face each other. You know, only every event or so it really happens, especially not the top caliber of teams.
Right.
Because, I mean, even if a European team comes to a North American event, you still have to find them in the bracket, right? So it's very tough. So it gives EnVy a look at, all right, so how do the Europeans play? Because they're going to have to play some European teams at some point. That's a given. And it also gives TCM, all right, let's have a look at the mind of EnVy, because EnVy are known as one of the smartest teams. You look at the strats they have in Search and Destroy everything, just a fantastic lineup. So really, I think it's mutual for both teams. I think that's why they both decided to do it.
It's going to be a win-win, especially, and I should say win again, the third win for the fans
win.
and us who will be able to tune in and watch all of those games. EnVy is going to be streaming on their MLG.tv/EnVy stream, and I know TCM is going to have a Twitch stream available as well. So big shout out to all those teams and going to be fantastic stuff. Make sure you tune in for the Optic SB LAN as well. But I'm truly excited for EnVy, TCM, and those are the two teams we're talking about today. Of course, Call of Duty Championships. Now it's about 8 days away. I looked at my non-existent watch.
Yeah, I was going to say, a freckle and a half.
This is now 8 days away. You and I will be heading out to LA to go cast the $1 million tournament. And up until that, we're going to be featuring and highlighting some of the best squads from the U.S. and from everywhere else around the world that will be traveling internationally to compete in LA. Today, though, we're kicking it off with one of the UK's finest. Talk to me about this squad.
So, TCM. What more can you say about this lineup? I mean, they finished first at the European qualifiers, where they took down the biggest rivals, and the team we looked at yesterday, Epsilon. And they did so in fantastic fashion. You can see the roster there on your screen. Kick things off with Gunshi, the most achieved European player and most accomplished European player as well. Then it goes over to Moose, a player that I don't think very many North American players have really ran into as of yet, but he's a player you desperately need to be watching out for. Marky B, I think everybody knows about that Scotsman in particular. He's very loud. You've seen him at Gfinity. He's getting very vocal and causing upsets. Then it goes on to Madcat. This is a player that you can speak to any pro in the community, American or European, and they will say one of the best on the game.
Madcat, such incredible reaction time, but when you look at that roster, Gunshi the most successful, right? Is he the veteran captain on this squad? Who's officially the captain for this lineup? Do you know?
To be honest, I think it's one of those where they all call the shots. And I think it just comes down to their experience together. Because, I mean, a lot of people have looked at that team and said, oh, individually, you know, they don't look that fantastic. You know, you put them against the Epsilon lineup, toe-to-toe, player versus player, and you would say, oh, the Epsilon lineup has better gun skill at points. But when it comes to the teamwork and their work ethic, there is no one like them in Europe. They will grind and grind and grind because at the end of the day, they see it as they have a serious point to prove.
You know, and I love Marky B especially because he's one of the few Europeans who is streaming on a regular basis.
Right.
He's always streaming. He's basically the one guy. Like when Nadeshot was the one guy streaming his Call of Duty stuff, he's kind of the forefront runner. He's kind of paving the way for everyone else. I love his dedication, how much time he puts into it. I want to learn a lot more about these guys. I've hung out with them at Gfinity. I've seen them and hung out, especially after Gfinity 2.
Right.
Really love talking to, especially Marky B and their coach Swizz.
I was expecting an accent coming from you.
Not yet.
You've been trying to practice it like all day.
Marky. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God,
give it all. But no. But to tell us more about these players, we have a very special guest, another guy with an accent. Let's bring on Mr. Shane. Shane, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. Now, Shane, you've played with these guys, you played against these guys, some friendlies, of course, and then some really tough competition. You saw them at the EU Championships. You're playing with Lightning Pandas at the World Championship.
Go Lightning Pandas.
Definitely a squad we're looking out for from Europe. But where does TCM rank amongst all the European teams in your book?
They're the #1 team in Europe as of right now. Everyone thought it was Epsilon at the start when it came down to the event. It was kind of close, but the scoreline at TCM kind of steamrolled them. You know, like players like Mad Cat and Moose. It's hard to not say they could go on and win the World Championships.
Could go on to win the World Championships, in your opinion. So let's look at this roster graphic, and I want you to walk us through each player. Give me a little description of each guy. We're going to kick it off, starting with Gunshi.
Gunshi's he's probably the most experienced player in Europe, and he's up there with players like Rambo and Merc, with like the most experienced players in the game. Like he's won tournaments, he's probably won about 10, 11 tournaments. He was a bit quiet on Black Ops 2, but this game he's really stepped it up and one of the best players again.
And next up, we have Moose, Thomas Hanley.
In my opinion, it's a big call, but I think he could be the best player on the game at the moment.
That's
his slay is very big call, but like his slaying power is insane. He's always been like at the top, but he's never had the team to like kind of back up, like give him the exposure that like he deserves. Moose, yeah, I could probably say he's the best player on the game. Easily the best player in Europe, though.
Now, I've seen Gunshi get fired up at tournaments. Moose never really caught him screaming. Is he an emotional player? Is he a quiet guy? What's kind of his demeanor when he's gaming?
Well, I always thought he was a quiet guy, but from what I spectate in the regional finals, you could hear TCM screaming their heads off from the soundproof booths. So, like, I'm pretty sure Moose was involved in that as well.
And next up on our roster graphic, we have Marky B.
Marky B, like, if you asked me, if someone asked me to team with Marky B a year ago, I probably would just spat on the floor in disgust and just laughed it off. But like, Marky B, he has unbelievably stepped up on this game, and I would say he is probably their team captain. Like, he's so good at like keeping them motivated and all stuff like that. He may be probably the weakest in the slaying power department, but when you've got players like Mad Cat and Moose surrounding them, then it doesn't really matter too much.
You said Marky B is kind of definitely the captain for this squad. He's been on TCM forever. Since I actually first met him, he was still a part of TCM. Is he the in-game shot caller for this team, do you know?
I'm not sure, to be honest, but I've teamed with Mad Cat the last year, and some of the tactics he'll pull out just mid-game, stuff we haven't been through, he'll just pull out a crazy tactic, and it would work too. So like, I'd say there's probably him and Moose. Him and Mad Cat and Moose are probably the shot callers in TCM.
So Mad Cat, this is really the last player on the graphic that we should dive deeper into. Mad Cat was too young to attend Call of Duty Championships last year. Now he has made the move from Epsilon to TCM. What makes this guy so special? He's
just like a complete player. Like, he's the hype player. He's got so much slaying power. He's smart. So it makes him a nightmare to play against for other teams. Fortunately, I spent a whole year teaming with him on Black Ops 2, so I didn't have that nightmare of playing against him. But the Lightning Pandas, we came against him on at the EU regionals. It was safe to say it didn't go as well. It went as they planned, of course, but like Mad Cat is an unbelievable player. It's hard to say who's better out of him or Moose.
Wow.
I'm surprised that you'd say that, Shane. I would have thought, you know, a lot of people would have considered Mad Cat just to be on that next level tier. I know a lot of the American players, when they see TCM coming over, they sit there and they think, oh, okay, Mad Cat. We know about Mad Cat from last year. He wasn't able to attend. This is kind of a scary roster coming over and competing against the world champs. But you know, Shane saying that Moose is up there, I will definitely agree with him. But I would have always put Mad Cat just a little bit above Moose. That's just me personally, though.
That's some powerful predictions, though. Either way, if you're saying that this team has two players, the two best players in Europe,
right,
and it's arguable of who's #1 between them, that's a good thing.
Oh,
very, very strong looking roster, but can you guys break it down for me to the next level? What are the roles on this squad? We kind of talked about who's going to be doing the play calling, most likely Moose and Mad Cat calling out the strategy, but when it comes to actual guns and the assault rifles versus the SMG, the objective versus the slaying roles, who takes what on this squad?
I'll let Shane take that.
Well, the two slayers, you've got Moose and Mad Cat. Marky B will take the objective role, and Gunshy's like, he's getting a bit old now, and he takes more of a slow AR role. But don't get me wrong, he's unbelievable at doing it.
See, I have some interesting stats on Gunch, because he was a player that I was really excited to looking into the World Championship. He's a player which I actually think I spoke about on ESR. I think it was maybe a couple of days ago, maybe last week. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I was saying how for me he's one of those players where I shared a flight home from an MLG event with Gunchi, and we sat there and we were on the plane the whole time, and we were just talking, and he was saying how he's been, you know, around the block. He's been everywhere. He's been to America tournaments. He's been to European tournaments. He's dominated. And he was one of those that just really now kind of found that drive. And I was looking at stats from the EU finals, and I was really surprised at what I saw, because I saw, I think it was a 1.35 KDR coming in from him.
Really?
But where it gets really impressive was his domination game. He was actually, I think, 5th overall for domination caps throughout the entire tournament.
So is that something just because they let him get that first flag, or do you think that's because he's one of those objective guys who wants to get into the opponent's base and neutralize some flags?
From everything I've seen, he's just one of those players who he's just going to do everything. He's going to do, if he wins a gunfight and he's near a flag, he's going to hop on it. He's going to win more gunfights on the flag, get the flag, and then hop off.
Well, you know, you always need that clutch player who you can just
always
trust to win that one-on-one. Gunshi, the veteran, you know, Shane, you said he plays slow, but in that situation, you don't necessarily need to be fast. You just need to be knowing where the opponents are coming from. When you watch the Epsilon versus TCM final, though, from that EU Championships, what notes would you write down, or what did you really take away from that matchup?
The thing is, what quite surprised me, as they played Strike Zone Domination, and Gunch, the most experienced player in Europe, also an AR player, he whipped out an SMG, and I think he may have had the most kills and like the best KD ratio on like an SMG dominant map. So that pretty surprised me. But if you want to take notes, you just attempt to shut Mad Cat and Moose down.
Shut down those two is so tough. And guys, let's actually take a moment and pull up the EU bracket if we still have it, and take a look at the road that these guys took through that tournament. Now, TCM, did they come in with that #1 seed, Benson?
I'm pretty sure they had that #1 seed, and you can see the graphic there. They played Lightning Pandas. Sorry to remind you, Shane. And they took down the Lightning Pandas, and then they went into the lucky. They went to the next round. They played TEC, a team who you cannot take lightly. I mean, they are a very talented roster. They made small work of them. And then they met Epsilon in the grand final. That was a final everybody at that event wanted to see. It was the matchup which everyone had really been wanting for quite some time. And TCM put all their critics at bay, and they took down Epsilon to be European champions.
Well, Shane, you had to play these guys in Domination, Search and Destroy, and Blitz. Can't talk. You played them in all 3 game modes. What do you think is TCM's strength of those 3, and what is their weakness?
The strength, I'm not sure, to be honest. I think they haven't really got a weakness. Maybe Blitz, the weakness, but like Mad Cat and Moose, unbelievable search and destroy players, and Domination, where it's a respawn, like a hype plays a big part. You'd be surprised that I've seen that event. I swear to God, the louder you shout, the more powerful your bullets are. and anyone that's seen Mad Cat play in real life, he's just an absolute lunatic. You can hear him screaming from across the building. So, but
now Benson tells me when Mad Cat screams that no one can understand what he's saying.
It's pretty hard to understand him.
Where is this guy from to have such a thick accent?
He's from Birmingham, right?
Yeah. So that's like, they probably have the worst accent in the country.
I feel like if he gets interviewed at Champs, we will need a translator there.
Now, can you guys understand what he's saying when he's screaming and getting hyped up?
When he's screaming, I can't understand him. I mean, Shane, he may.
I spent a year teaming with him, so like the hype, we just bounced off each other. I screamed at him, he was screaming at me, then we both screamed at the other team, and like it was just
loud noises. Love it.
So, did you ever see Mad Cat leaving Epsilon to join TCM, Shane?
No, Mad Cat was the guy that got me dropped the little git, but it was a fair decision in the end. But like Mad Cat left, I think, a week after I got dropped, or 2 weeks after, and everyone thought at the time it was a bad decision. But then at the end of the day, he won the biggest tournament in Europe this year, pretty comfortably too. So you got to give it to him.
All right, solid stuff so far. Well, we've seen the team. We saw the road that they took through that EU Championship. Of course, met up with you guys in that second round, win on TEC matchup. Was that close at all? Because TEC is another squad that we'll be highlighting on our show a little bit later, and another team that they could potentially run up against again if they get to that double elimination bracket at COD Champs.
That would actually be a really interesting matchup. If you think if they had to replay them. I didn't really catch the full first game. Shane, he'll be able to probably give you better insight into that. But from everything I heard, TC took it pretty comfortably.
TCM, yeah, it was pretty much a bit of an onslaught, to be honest. It was like Tech didn't have they didn't seem to have the hype they did in the round before. So like it seemed like they seemed pretty pleased that they qualified. But then TCM, they wanted to go all the way, and they proved it in that game. It was a pretty easy 3-0, if I remember correctly.
Pretty easy 3-0. Sorry,
Tech may look for some revenge.
Yeah.
Maybe. Potentially.
Well, Moose and the boys looking very strong. I can't wait to watch some gameplay from them. We have a game from the Gfinity EU Championships that's coming from their YouTube channel. If you guys want to see these squads for yourself, of course, you can check out a lot of the European action on youtube.com/GfinityTV. We're going to commercial break. When we come back, I have some Call of Duty Championship passes to give out to people who live in LA and want to come attend that event. So stay tuned for that. We'll tell you how to win it. And we'll also be showing the first game of tonight's show. Who's it going to be between?
It's going to be TCM versus Epsilon. It's the grand final of the European Championship. And you have to say, when you watch this game, you're going to realize exactly why these two European teams are powerhouses and exactly why Shane has been saying Moose and Madcat, best two players.
All right, guys, stay tuned. The ESR Daily Update continues after this.
Lightning Pandas.